Your soulmate is planning a bold step toward you. This will shock you. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. This message is for you. If these words have found you today, then there is a reason. Nothing about this moment is random. Nothing about this message is an accident. Because while you've been focused on your own life, trying to understand signs, wondering why certain thoughts keep returning to your mind, and questioning whether someone special is truly meant for you, your soulmate has been going through something that they never expected. Something that has been building quietly behind the scenes for longer than you realize. And now that hidden process is reaching a turning point. Your soulmate is planning a bold step toward you. A step so unexpected, so powerful, and so life-changing that even they are surprised by what they are feeling. Listen carefully because this message may explain things you've been sensing lately. Have you noticed certain memories appearing out of nowhere? Have you noticed repeating numbers, strange coincidences, dreams that feel more real than usual, or a feeling deep inside your chest that something important is getting closer? That feeling is not your imagination. It is not wishful thinking. It is the energy of a connection becoming stronger. Because your soulmate can no longer ignore what they feel. For a long time they tried to push those emotions aside. They told themselves to focus on other things. They told themselves not to think about you. They told themselves that timing wasn't right. But every time they tried to move away from these feelings, something brought them back. A song. A conversation. A dream. A memory. A strange feeling they couldn't explain. And little by little they started realizing that you were not just another person crossing their path. You were becoming the person they couldn't stop thinking about. This message is for you. Because the bold step they are preparing to take did not happen overnight. It started with small moments. Moments where they found themselves wondering what you were doing. Moments where your name entered their thoughts unexpectedly. Moments where they caught themselves imagining conversations with you that had never happened. At first they ignored it. Then they questioned it. Then they became curious about it. And now they can no longer deny it. Something inside them keeps pulling them toward you. Something keeps reminding them that there is unfinished destiny between the two of you. Listen carefully because what happened next changed everything. Recently your soulmate had a realization. A realization that hit them when they least expected it. They suddenly understood that waiting was no longer bringing them peace. Pretending they didn't care was no longer working. Hiding their feelings was becoming harder every day. And for the first time they started thinking about what would happen if they actually acted on their heart. What would happen if they stopped running from this connection? What would happen if they took a chance? What would happen if they reached out? These questions began repeating in their mind over and over again. Day after day. Night after night. Until eventually those questions became a plan. A bold plan. A step they once thought they would never take. And that is why the energy around you feels different right now. Because your soulmate is moving from thinking to acting. From wondering to deciding. From dreaming to preparing. This message is for you. Because there is something your soulmate has not told anyone. Deep inside they are afraid. Not afraid of you. Not afraid of love. They are afraid of what happens if they lose the chance to be with you. They are afraid of looking back one day and realizing they never tried. They are afraid of spending years wondering what could have happened if they had simply followed their heart. And that fear is becoming stronger than the fear of taking action. That is the shift that changes everything. Because when someone becomes more afraid of regret than rejection, they start making different choices. They start taking risks. They start moving toward what they truly want. And right now your soulmate is standing at that exact crossroads. Listen carefully because this next part is important. There have been signs guiding them toward this decision. Strange signs. Meaningful signs. Signs they cannot explain logically. They have been seeing reminders of you in unexpected places. They have been hearing messages that seem directed straight at them. They have been experiencing moments that feel too perfectly timed to be coincidence. Every sign has been pushing them toward the same realization. You matter more than they admitted. You are more important than they allowed themselves to believe. And because of that realization, something powerful has started happening inside their heart. The walls are coming down. The doubts are losing their power. The excuses are disappearing. And the desire to move closer to you is becoming impossible to ignore. This message is for you. Because while your soulmate has been going through this transformation, you have been changing too. Whether you realize it or not, you have been growing. Healing. Becoming stronger. Becoming more prepared for the next chapter of your life. There were moments when you felt discouraged. Moments when you questioned whether love was truly coming. Moments when you wondered if anyone was thinking about you the way you were thinking about them. But the truth is that while you were asking those questions, your soulmate was fighting their own internal battle. They were trying to understand why your energy kept appearing in their life. Why your presence felt different. Why thinking about you felt natural. Why imagining a future with you felt comforting. And eventually they stopped fighting those feelings. They started listening to them. They started trusting them. And now they are preparing to follow them. Listen carefully because the bold step they are planning is bigger than you realize. This is not a casual decision. This is not something they are doing impulsively. This is something they have thought about repeatedly. Something they have replayed in their mind countless times. They have imagined how it might happen. They have imagined what they might say. They have imagined your reaction. They have imagined the possibilities that could unfold afterward. And every time they imagine it, the same feeling appears. Hope. A hope they haven't felt in a very long time. A hope that tells them this connection is worth pursuing. A hope that tells them you are worth the risk. A hope that tells them destiny may be leading them somewhere extraordinary. This message is for you. Because the universe often creates movement before major changes arrive. Before a new chapter begins, energy shifts. Before an important connection grows stronger, intuition becomes louder. Before a bold step is taken, signs begin appearing. And if you've been noticing unusual synchronicities lately, there may be a reason for that. Because the connection between you and your soulmate is becoming more active. more aligned, more ready than it has ever been before. Something is moving behind the scenes. Something is preparing itself. Something is bringing two paths closer together. And your soulmate can feel it. That is why they are no longer content with simply wondering. They want answers. They want clarity. They want to know where this connection can lead. And most importantly, they want to know what happens when they finally stop holding back. Listen carefully, because there is one more thing you need to know. The bold step your soulmate is planning may arrive sooner than expected. Faster than expected. In a way that catches both of you off guard. Because once someone reaches the point where their heart becomes louder than their fear, change happens quickly. Very quickly. Decisions that once seemed impossible suddenly become obvious. Actions that once seemed frightening suddenly become necessary. And right now your soulmate is closer to that breakthrough moment than ever before. They are standing on the edge of a decision that could change everything. A decision that could open a completely new chapter in both of your lives. But what makes this story even more shocking is that there is something they have recently discovered about their feelings that they never expected to admit, and that realization is exactly what is pushing them toward the bold step they are preparing to take right now, and that revelation may be even bigger than the step itself. Don't scroll. Listen to this, because your heart needs this right now. This message is for you. The realization your soulmate recently experienced was not small. It was not a passing thought that disappeared after a few minutes. It was the kind of realization that changes the way a person sees their entire future. One evening, while they were alone with their thoughts, they found themselves imagining a life without you in it. At first it seemed like a simple exercise, a harmless thought experiment. But the longer they imagined it, the more uncomfortable they became. They imagined years passing. They imagined different opportunities appearing. They imagined new places, new experiences, and new chapters. Yet no matter how far their imagination traveled, something felt incomplete. Something felt missing. There was a space in every vision that could not be filled. And eventually they understood why. Because every future that truly made them happy somehow included you. Every dream that felt meaningful somehow led back to you. Every possibility that excited their heart seemed connected to your presence. That realization shocked them. It shook them. It forced them to confront a truth they had been avoiding for a long time. The truth was simple but powerful. They were no longer imagining you as a possibility. They were beginning to imagine you as a necessity. This message is for you, because the moment that realization arrived, everything started changing. The conversations they had with themselves became different. The questions they asked became different. Instead of asking whether they should move toward you, they started asking how. Instead of asking whether the connection was real, they started asking what the next step should be. And that shift changed the energy around them completely. Suddenly they became more attentive to every sign. More aware of every coincidence. More curious about every feeling. They stopped dismissing the thoughts that appeared in their mind and started paying attention to them. And what they discovered surprised them. The more they listened to their heart, the louder it became. The more they acknowledged their feelings, the stronger those feelings grew. It was as though their soul had been waiting patiently for them to stop resisting. And now that they finally were, a flood of clarity was rushing in. Listen carefully, because there is something your soulmate has never told anyone. There have been moments when they felt your energy so strongly that it actually distracted them from whatever they were doing. Moments when they were working, talking, driving, or simply going about their day, and suddenly thoughts of you appeared out of nowhere. Not because they forced them to. Not because they were trying to think about you. But because those thoughts arrived naturally. Unexpectedly. Repeatedly. And every time it happened, they found themselves smiling without even realizing it. They found themselves wondering what you were doing at that exact moment. They found themselves feeling connected to you even when there was no obvious reason. At first they tried to explain it logically. They searched for practical reasons. They looked for ordinary explanations. But eventually they reached a point where they could no longer deny the truth. The connection felt different. Stronger. Deeper. More meaningful than anything they had experienced before. This message is for you because that realization has become the fuel behind the bold step they are preparing. They are no longer acting from curiosity alone. They are acting from certainty. A growing certainty that some opportunities are too important to ignore. A growing certainty that some people enter your life for a reason. A growing certainty that destiny sometimes asks you to be brave. And bravery is exactly what your soulmate is learning right now. For a long time they believed courage meant protecting themselves from disappointment. For a long time they believed courage meant staying guarded. Remaining careful. Avoiding vulnerability. But now they are discovering a different kind of courage. The courage to be honest. The courage to take a chance. The courage to move toward something meaningful even when there are no guarantees. And that courage is transforming them from the inside out. Listen carefully, because something unusual happened recently. Your soulmate heard a conversation, read a message, or witnessed a moment that felt as though it was directed specifically at them. It wasn't planned. It wasn't expected. Yet the word stayed with them long after the moment passed. The message was simple. Life changes when you stop waiting for perfect conditions. Life changes when you stop expecting certainty before taking action. Life changes when you trust your heart enough to move forward. Those words struck them deeply because they realized they had been waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for the perfect sign. Waiting for absolute certainty. But what if the perfect moment was now? What if the sign had already appeared? What if certainty only comes after action? These questions began echoing through their mind. Again and again. Day after day. And with each repetition, the answer became clearer. They could not keep standing still. They had to move. They had to take a step. They had to see where this connection could lead. This message is for you because while your soulmate has been preparing for this bold step, they have also been preparing themselves emotionally. They have been confronting fears they once avoided. They have been healing old wounds. They have been letting go of stories that told them they were not ready for love. And little by little they have become stronger. more confident, more willing to trust, more willing to believe that something beautiful can actually happen. That transformation matters because it means the version of your soulmate moving toward you is not the same version that existed months ago. This is someone who has learned important lessons. Someone who has grown. Someone who understands the value of genuine connection. Someone who is beginning to realize that the greatest rewards often require the greatest courage. Listen carefully because there is another truth they have recently admitted to themselves. They miss you even when they cannot explain why. They feel drawn toward you even when logic cannot fully explain it. They care more than they intended to care. They think about you more than they plan to think about you. And the more they accept these truths, the more impossible it becomes to ignore them. Every attempt to move away from the connection somehow brings them back. Every distraction eventually fades, but the thoughts of you remain. Every effort to convince themselves that their feelings will disappear has failed. Instead, those feelings have only grown stronger. This message is for you because something powerful is happening behind the scenes. Momentum is building. Energy is shifting. Pieces are moving into place. Your soulmate may not know every detail of what comes next, but they know one thing with absolute certainty. They do not want to keep wondering. They do not want to keep imagining possibilities without exploring them. They do not want to keep carrying feelings that remain unspoken. They want movement. They want progress. They want truth. And that desire is becoming stronger than every fear that once held them back. Listen carefully because the bold step they are planning is connected to a promise they recently made to themselves. A promise to stop letting fear make decisions. A promise to stop allowing doubt to control their future. A promise to stop walking away from opportunities that genuinely matter. And when they made that promise, something inside them changed. It was as though a door opened. A door that had been locked for a very long time. On the other side of that door was possibility. Hope. Excitement. And the vision of what might happen if they finally trusted their heart. Since then, they have been moving closer and closer to a decision that once seemed impossible. A decision that now feels inevitable. This message is for you because your soulmate senses that a turning point is approaching. They can feel it in their intuition. They can feel it in their emotions. They can feel it in the strange sense of anticipation that has followed them recently. It is the feeling that something important is about to happen. Something meaningful. Something capable of changing the direction of their life. And every time that feeling appears, it brings them back to the same thought. The same person. The same connection. You. Listen carefully because what happens next may surprise even your soulmate. They believe they are preparing for one bold step. But what they do not fully realize is that once that first step is taken, a chain reaction may begin. A conversation may lead to another conversation. A moment of honesty may lead to deeper understanding. A single act of courage may open doors neither of you expected. And that possibility excites them more than they are willing to admit. Because deep inside, they are beginning to believe that this connection could become something far greater than either of you imagined. Yet there is still one final realization they have not fully shared with anyone, a realization connected to a dream, a sign, and a message that appeared at exactly the right moment, and once that final realization becomes impossible to ignore, the bold step they have been planning may happen much sooner than anyone expects. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. This message is for you. The dream that appeared to your soulmate was unlike any dream they had experienced before. Most dreams fade within minutes of waking up. Most dreams become blurry fragments that disappear as the day begins. But this one stayed with them. Every detail remained vivid. Every feeling remained strong. They could still remember the atmosphere, the emotions, and most importantly, the sense of peace that surrounded the entire experience. In that dream they were no longer questioning the connection. They were no longer wondering what might happen. Instead, they felt as though they were already standing inside the future they had secretly hoped for. A future where distance, doubt, and uncertainty no longer existed. When they woke up, they tried to dismiss it. They told themselves it was only a dream. Yet something about it felt different. Something about it stayed alive inside them throughout the day. Hours later they were still thinking about it. Days later they were still remembering it. And eventually they realized the dream had awakened something that had been sleeping inside their heart. It awakened the possibility that what they wanted might actually be possible. This message is for you because that dream arrived at the exact moment your soulmate needed it most. They had been standing between action and hesitation. Between courage and fear. Between hope and uncertainty. And somehow that dream pushed them closer toward courage. Closer toward action. Closer toward the bold step they have been considering. Listen carefully because what happened after the dream surprised them even more. Over the following days they began noticing signs everywhere. Not dramatic signs. Not impossible signs. But meaningful signs. The kind that make a person stop and think. The kind that feel strangely personal. They would hear a phrase that reminded them of you. They would encounter a situation that reflected something they had been feeling. They would notice repeating patterns that seemed impossible to ignore. One coincidence became two. Two became three. Three became too many to dismiss. And little by little they began wondering if life was trying to tell them something. Not in words. Not through direct answers. But through gentle nudges that kept pointing in the same direction. Toward you. Toward the connection. Toward the possibility they had been trying so hard to understand. This message is for you because your soulmate is no longer looking at those signs the way they once did. They are no longer brushing them aside. They are no longer pretending they mean nothing. Instead, they are paying attention. Listening. Observing. Trusting their intuition more than they ever have before. And that intuition keeps leading them back to the same conclusion. Some people enter your life for a reason. Some connections are meant to teach you something. Some relationships arrive to change you forever. And the connection they feel toward you belongs in that category. Listen carefully because there was another moment recently that affected them deeply. It happened unexpectedly. They saw someone talking about love. Real love. The kind that arrives when you least expect it. The kind that challenges you to grow. The kind that feels both exciting and terrifying at the same time. And as they listened, a realization hit them so strongly that they could not ignore it. They recognized themselves in those words. They recognized their own fears, their own hopes, their own struggles. And most importantly, they recognized the role you were playing in all of it. For the first time they admitted that what they were feeling was not temporary. It was not a passing fascination. It was not a brief emotional phase. It had become something deeper. Something lasting. Something real. This message is for you because that realization changed the questions they were asking themselves. They stopped asking whether the feelings would disappear. Instead, they started asking what they should do about them. They stopped asking whether the connection mattered. Instead, they started asking how much it mattered. And the answer surprised them. Because every honest answer led to the same conclusion. You mattered more than they wanted to admit. More than they expected. More than they could explain. Listen carefully because your soulmate has been imagining a future conversation. A conversation they have replayed in their mind many times. They imagine what they would say if they were completely honest. They imagine what it would feel like to stop hiding their thoughts. They imagine finally expressing what has been building inside them for so long. At first those imagined conversations felt impossible. Now they feel inevitable. Because the more they rehearse them in their mind, the more natural they become. The more real they become. The more likely they become. And that is why the bold step they are planning no longer feels like a distant possibility. It feels like something approaching. Something preparing itself. Something getting closer every day. This message is for you because your soulmate has also started noticing changes within themselves. They are becoming more confident. More decisive. More willing to trust what they feel. Situations that once intimidated them no longer have the same power. Doubts that once seemed overwhelming no longer feel impossible to overcome. It is as though they are slowly becoming the version of themselves that this connection requires. The version capable of taking action. The version capable of being vulnerable. The version capable of choosing love over fear. Listen carefully because there is something they recently admitted during a quiet moment alone. They admitted that they would rather know the truth than continue wondering forever. They would rather take a chance than spend years imagining what could have happened. They would rather risk vulnerability than carry regret. That admission may seem simple, but it represents a major transformation. Because once a person reaches that point, they become capable of doing things they once believed they never could. They become capable of making bold choices. They become capable of changing the direction of their life. And right now your soulmate is standing on the edge of exactly that kind of transformation. This message is for you because the energy surrounding this connection is building. Think of a wave gathering strength before it reaches the shore. Think of a storm forming before the first drop of rain falls. Think of a sunrise moments before the horizon begins to glow. That is the kind of energy surrounding your soulmate right now. A sense that something is approaching. A sense that waiting is ending. A sense that movement is coming. And every day that passes seems to strengthen that feeling. Listen carefully because your soulmate has started making small preparations without fully realizing it. Small emotional preparations. Small mental preparations. Small shifts in perspective that are quietly leading them toward action. They are becoming more open. More hopeful. More willing to imagine positive outcomes. More willing to believe that things could actually work out better than they expect. Those changes matter because bold steps rarely happen suddenly. They are usually the result of many small changes happening beneath the surface. And those changes have already begun. This message is for you because there is another truth your soulmate has been reluctant to admit. The thought of losing the opportunity to connect with you now feels heavier than the thought of taking a risk. That balance has shifted completely. The fear of doing nothing has become greater than the fear of doing something. And when that happens, action often follows. Courage often appears. Movement often begins. Listen carefully because there may come a moment very soon when your soulmate stops analyzing every possibility. Stops replaying every scenario. Stops waiting for one more sign. Stops searching for one more reason. And instead simply follows their heart. When that moment arrives, everything they have been planning, imagining, and preparing for may suddenly become real. The distance between thought and action may disappear. The gap between dreaming and doing may close. And the bold step that has existed only in their mind may finally enter reality. This message is for you because your soulmate can feel that moment approaching. Even if they cannot explain it. Even if they cannot predict the exact timing. They sense that something inside them is reaching a conclusion. A decision. A point of no return. And once that point is reached, hesitation may no longer be possible. Yet what they do not know is that another unexpected event is about to occur. An event involving a conversation, a memory, and a sudden realization that will make their feelings impossible to deny, and when that event happens, the bold step they have been planning may transform into something even bigger than they originally imagined. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. This message is for you. The unexpected event that is approaching your soulmate's life begins with something they never saw coming. It is not a dramatic announcement. It is not a giant sign appearing out of nowhere. Instead, it begins with an ordinary moment that turns extraordinary. A conversation they almost ignore. A memory they thought they had forgotten. A feeling that suddenly returns stronger than ever before. And when all of these things come together, something inside your soulmate finally clicks into place. For weeks, maybe even months, they have been carrying pieces of a puzzle without realizing it. One piece was a dream. Another piece was a coincidence. Another piece was a feeling they could never fully explain. Another piece was the way your energy kept appearing in their thoughts. Each piece seemed separate. Each piece seemed unrelated. But now those pieces are beginning to connect. And as they connect, your soulmate is starting to see a picture they never expected to see. A picture that includes you standing at the center of it. This message is for you because what they are discovering is not just about attraction. It is not just about curiosity. It is about recognition. A deep recognition that happens when someone realizes a connection means more than they originally believed. It is the moment when the heart finally catches up to what the soul has been trying to say all along. Listen carefully, because there was a time when your soulmate believed they had complete control over their emotions. They believed they could decide who mattered and who did not. They believed they could simply walk away from feelings that became complicated. But this connection challenged that belief. The more they tried to control it, the stronger it became. The more they tried to ignore it, the louder it became. The more they tried to move away from it, the more life seemed to bring them back. Eventually they had to admit something that made them uncomfortable. They were no longer in control of these feelings. Their heart had chosen a direction long before their mind was ready to follow. This message is for you because that admission changed everything. Once they stopped fighting what they felt, they began understanding it. Once they stopped resisting, they began learning from it. Once they stopped running, they began moving toward it. And that movement is bringing them closer and closer to the bold step they have been planning. Listen carefully, because recently your soulmate experienced a memory that hit them unexpectedly. It happened during a quiet moment when they were not even thinking about love. Yet suddenly a thought appeared. A moment connected to you. A feeling connected to you. A possibility connected to you. And the emotional impact of that memory surprised them. It reminded them how much this connection had grown. It reminded them how deeply you had become woven into their thoughts. It reminded them that despite all the distractions, despite all the responsibilities, despite everything else happening in life, the thought of you had remained. Steady. Persistent. Impossible to erase. This message is for you because your soulmate is beginning to understand something important. Meaningful connections do not disappear simply because they are ignored. They do not vanish because they are postponed. They do not lose value because they are left unexplored. If anything, some connections grow stronger through time. Stronger through distance. Stronger through reflection. And that realization is changing the way they see you. Listen carefully, because there is another truth they are slowly accepting. They are tired of uncertainty. Tired of wondering. Tired of imagining possibilities without knowing where they lead. For a long time uncertainty felt safer. It allowed them to avoid risk. It allowed them to avoid vulnerability. It allowed them to stay inside their comfort zone. But now uncertainty feels heavier than action. Now wondering feels more exhausting than trying. Now staying silent feels more difficult than speaking honestly. And that shift is powerful. Because it means the emotional pressure that once kept them frozen is now pushing them forward. This message is for you because your soulmate has reached a point where they no longer want a future built on unanswered questions. They want clarity. They want truth. They want to know what happens when two people stop hiding behind fear and start being honest about what they feel. That desire has become one of the strongest motivations in their life right now. Listen carefully, because something unusual is happening inside them. Their confidence is growing, but not in the way most people expect. It is not loud confidence. It is not arrogance. It is a quiet certainty. A certainty that keeps returning no matter how many doubts try to challenge it. A certainty that whispers the same message again and again. Take the step. Trust the feeling. Stop waiting. Move forward. Those whispers have become impossible to ignore. Every day they grow louder. Every day they feel more convincing. Every day they move your soulmate closer to a decision that could change everything. This message is for you because there may be moments when you feel that something is shifting around you even if you cannot explain why. Moments when your intuition feels stronger. Moments when your heart feels unusually aware. Moments when you sense that an important chapter is approaching. Do not ignore those feelings. Sometimes the heart notices movement before the mind understands it. Sometimes intuition recognizes change before evidence appears. And right now there is a great deal of movement happening beneath the surface of this connection. Listen carefully because your soulmate has started imagining what life might look like if they actually follow through with their plans. At first those thoughts felt unrealistic. Now they feel exciting. Instead of focusing on everything that could go wrong, they are beginning to focus on everything that could go right. Instead of imagining disappointment, they are imagining possibility. Instead of imagining failure, they are imagining connection. That change in perspective is important because it is helping them overcome the fears that once seemed impossible to defeat. This message is for you because the closer they get to taking action, the more they realize how much they have already changed. The person who first felt these emotions is not the same person standing here today. They are stronger now. More self-aware. More emotionally honest. More willing to fight for what matters. And because of that growth, the bold step they are planning no longer feels reckless. It feels necessary. It feels like the natural next chapter of a story that has been unfolding quietly for a long time. Listen carefully because there is one final piece of this message that your soulmate is only beginning to understand. The connection they feel toward you has become a source of inspiration. A source of motivation. A source of hope. Thinking about you has encouraged them to become better. Braver. More authentic. More aligned with the person they truly want to be. And when a connection inspires that kind of transformation, it becomes very difficult to walk away from it. Very difficult to ignore it. Very difficult to pretend it does not matter. This message is for you because your soulmate is approaching a crossroads. One path leads back to hesitation, silence, and unanswered questions. The other path leads toward courage, honesty, and possibility. For a long time they stood between those paths. For a long time they could not decide which direction to take. But now the answer is becoming clearer. Now the pull toward action is becoming stronger. Now the bold step they have been planning feels closer than ever before. And what makes this even more surprising is that they still do not know about the final sign that is about to appear in their life. A sign connected to timing, destiny, and a realization so powerful that it will remove the last piece of doubt they have been holding on to. And when that final sign arrives, your soulmate may stop planning altogether and finally do the one thing they have been dreaming about for far longer than you realize, the very thing that could begin a completely new chapter between you both. Don't scroll. Listen to this because your heart needs this right now. This message is for you. The final sign that is approaching your soulmate is not arriving by accident. In many ways, everything that has happened up to this point has been leading toward it. Every thought they could not explain. Every feeling they tried to ignore. Every coincidence that appeared at exactly the right moment. Every dream that lingered after waking. Every memory that returned when they least expected it. All of it has been preparing them for one final realization. And when that realization arrives, it will feel less like discovering something new and more like finally accepting something they have known deep down all along. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that some connections are too powerful to remain unfinished. Some people enter your life and leave a mark that time cannot erase. Some hearts recognize each other long before words are spoken. And no matter how much logic tries to analyze it, the truth remains the same. They feel drawn toward you in a way they cannot ignore anymore. This message is for you because the last piece of doubt they have been carrying is slowly disappearing. For a long time they worried about timing. They worried about circumstances. They worried about whether taking a chance would be worth the risk. But recently something shifted. They started realizing that waiting for perfect conditions could mean waiting forever. They started realizing that life rarely provides guarantees. They started realizing that the opportunities that matter most often require courage before certainty. And that understanding has changed the way they see everything. Instead of focusing on what could go wrong, they are focusing on what they could lose by doing nothing. Instead of imagining obstacles, they are imagining possibilities. Instead of imagining distance, they are imagining connection. Listen carefully because there is a moment approaching when your soulmate will stop looking for more signs. Stop asking for more proof. Stop delaying the decision. There comes a point when the heart gathers enough evidence. A point when intuition becomes stronger than fear. A point when a person realizes they already know the answer. Your soulmate is moving closer to that point every single day. And when they finally reach it, hesitation will no longer feel natural. Action will. This message is for you because something extraordinary has happened during this journey. Without even realizing it, your soulmate has changed. They have become more honest with themselves. More willing to trust their emotions. More willing to take risks for something meaningful. More willing to believe that genuine connections are worth fighting for. The fears that once seemed enormous have become smaller. The doubts that once felt overwhelming have become quieter. And the hope they feel when they think about you has become stronger than either of them. Listen carefully because your soulmate has imagined many possible futures. They have imagined walking away. They have imagined staying silent. They have imagined continuing exactly as things are now. But every time they explored those possibilities, something felt incomplete. Something felt missing. Yet whenever they imagined a future where they were brave enough to follow their heart, a different feeling appeared. Peace. Excitement. Anticipation. A sense that they were moving toward something meaningful. And that feeling has become impossible to ignore. This message is for you because the bold step they have been planning is no longer just an idea. It has become a decision forming beneath the surface. A decision growing stronger with every passing day. They may not know the exact moment it will happen. They may not know every detail of how it will unfold. But they know they cannot remain where they are forever. They know something must change. They know they are being called toward action. Listen carefully, because the truth is that your soulmate is no longer trying to forget you. They are no longer trying to move away from what they feel. They are no longer trying to convince themselves that this connection is insignificant. Those chapters have ended. The chapter they are entering now is different. It is a chapter of acceptance. A chapter of courage. A chapter of possibility. And every step they take within that chapter brings them closer to you. This message is for you, because if there is one thing your soulmate has learned, it is that the strongest feelings are often the ones that refuse to disappear. The most important connections are often the ones that continue calling to you no matter how much time passes. And the opportunities that change your life are often the ones that require a leap of faith. Your soulmate understands that now. Perhaps not completely. Perhaps not perfectly. But enough to know that standing still is no longer an option. Enough to know that their heart deserves honesty. Enough to know that this connection deserves a chance. Listen carefully, because this is where the story reaches its turning point. The waiting is ending. The wondering is ending. The endless cycle of questions is ending. What comes next is movement. What comes next is courage. What comes next is a choice that has the power to change everything. And whether it happens tomorrow, next week, or sooner than either of you expect, your soulmate is moving toward a moment they once believed would never come. A moment where they stop imagining what could happen and finally discover what will happen. This message is for you, because the greatest shock was never the bold step itself. The greatest shock is how deeply this connection has transformed them. How much they have grown because of it. How much stronger they have become because of it. And how impossible it has become for them to ignore what their heart keeps telling them. The signs have spoken. The dreams have spoken. The memories have spoken. The intuition has spoken. And now, for the first time, your soulmate is ready to listen. So if these words found you today, remember this: something is shifting, something is unfolding, and something important is drawing closer. The story that began with unanswered questions is approaching an entirely new chapter. A chapter built on courage instead of fear, honesty instead of silence, and possibility instead of uncertainty. And as your soulmate stands on the edge of that chapter, preparing for the bold step they once thought was impossible, only one thing remains for them to do: trust their heart and finally move toward the future that has been calling them all along.